Welcome to the Positive Productivity Podcast, episode number 70.
Welcome to Positive Productivity Podcast, where we empower our audience to achieve and appreciate personal and professional success, especially in the face of adversity. Listen in as our guests reveal their stories of challenges and hurdles and how they overcame defeat and became triumphant in their endeavors. Let's get motivated and move forward with your host, Kim Sutton.
Welcome back to another episode of Positive Productivity. This is your host, Kim Sutton, and today I am thrilled to have not only a great friend and my business coach, but my great friend and my business coach. That was an awesome introduction, wasn't it? Coach Frederick West from Look Faith First. Hey, Coach, how you doing?
I am very blessed as always, my dear, and excited to be a part of this. I mean, I was, part of the infancy. I remember having many conversations about this. And so really it's exciting to even be a part of it and to see it grow the way that it has.
Listeners, Coach and I have known each other for just shy of 2 years, and I can't believe how fast those 2 years have flown. But Coach has seen my highs and my lows and everything in between. And would it be fair to say that there has been a roller coaster? This is not an episode about me. It's supposed to be about you.
I would say, the entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster. That's kind of a part of the journey itself. There's a group that I'm a part of here locally. They call it E-Venture, and the E stands for entrepreneurial venture, because there are roller coasters. There are times where you're high, you have a great amount of certainty, you have a great amount of clarity, a great amount of success, and life is just coming so easy. You barely even recognize the challenges you're dealing with, and there are other times where reality really hits you, and you are really pushing uphill, and it's about riding your bike. It's about saying, rather when I'm at the top of my hill, make sure if I'm going back down, I'm pedaling hard so I can get right back up the next one. So, yep, that's part of it.
Oh, I absolutely love that. How come you haven't used that one on me?
I just hadn't had the time, It's situationally, it's got to be relevant. Situationally, it's got to be appropriate. And, don't worry, it was coming, and it still may, because when it is relevant, it's very relevant to keep, again, when you're a little kid and you learn, not until you're, 10 or 11 or 12 that, you can fly down the hill and put your hands up and your feet up, but then at the bottom of that hill, it stinks going back up the next one. Learn to pedal, you learn to get faster, and the next hill's even faster than that.
I think I just learned it. It took me all these years to learn that because I was able to put my legs out.
See,
Hello. Okay. So now that I know that I need to keep on pedaling all the way down the hill to keep on going back up, let's get back to you. I would love for you to share your journey with the audience and share your own entrepreneurial journey. I almost botched that word up really good. And more about your background, Coach. Tell the audience about you.
Sure. My journey started a little earlier than most people's because I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. When I was, 4, 5, 6 years old, my parents owned multiple businesses. They owned car lots, actually a couple in Ohio, a couple close to you. They owned restaurants. They owned cleaning companies and electrical companies and different things, and even antique stores. So there's this real blend around being around business, and it was interesting for me because some things really served me as far as working in the business world, and some things worked against me, which I learned later on in life. But as the oldest of 3 boys going through that childhood, I would be the first one to do special things for the business. So I was the first furniture mover that wasn't one of the adults, and I was one of the first ones to work at the counter that was an adult. I was one of the first ones to answer the phone calls and do the sales and everything else. And again, I just had this appreciation because I was surrounded by adults quite often. I didn't, if you want to look at childhood and, going out and playing all the time, that's not what you do in an entrepreneurial family. They recruit you early because they need support. So, through that journey, I had an appreciation for small business. I saw a lot of things that my parents did right. Saw a lot of the things my parents didn't do that was in their best interests. And it was unfortunate, but by the time I was, 17, 18 years old, and I was ready to go out and venture the world, the opportunities of those businesses were no longer there. A lot of bad decisions put them in a situation where they had to go, back to work for the man. And they never call him the man, but I've learned that since. And it was very interesting for me because I don't know. It just, you get that entrepreneurial spirit when you're younger, and that's what you think you're going to do. It's kind of interesting to go into, entry level and start from the bottom up somewhere. So it didn't take long for me to find out that I was not a good match for, I don't know if you want to call it the regular business environment or traditional business environment. Because one good thing that was going for me was when I went to work, I went to work. I mean, when I was there was no sitting down, there was no sleeping, it was about putting it all in, because that's what we did. We put it all in and we made sure we got things done. We didn't worry about credit, because in a small business, especially in a family-run business, credit doesn't matter because everyone benefits. When the right things are done, everyone benefits from it. But some of the things I didn't learn as well was about the politics. I didn't learn that there was a pecking order, as it were. I didn't learn about the credit and the fact that, if you work too hard, people didn't appreciate getting the work done. They appreciated, this hierarchical order of things, and they were always worried about, who was going to do this and who was going to do that and how they looked. And it really caused a lot of confusion. And so I went through a lot of jobs during my, teens and 20s trying to find something that's like, okay, where can I really apply my skills and apply that mindset? Let's get it done. And I found out that really the only place that was available for me was consulting, sales and consulting. So for a couple of years, I was trying to find my niche where I was going to consult. And I did some things in the more traditional, sales. I did the car sales and different thing, everything else, kind of a B2C, business to consumer. But I found where I was getting the most fulfilled, and I found where I was making the biggest impact was the B2B. And so from 2003 to 2008, I was in the financial services industry, which in 2003 was a great place to be. By 2005, it was even better. But by 2007, 2008, it wasn't doing as well. And so even though it was B2C, I still found a way to be B2B because I was helping, businesses with their 401ks and everything else, again, just leaning towards business. But then 2008 just all came down. And I think this happened to a lot of entrepreneurs in 2008, 2009 timeframe, where it just seemed like overnight, everything dried up. In financial services specifically, we had three things that we offered. Number one, we offered mortgages. Well, obviously in that time frame, mortgages were not where you wanted to be. The two reasons, one, people were no longer qualifying for the houses that they used to. But two, the banks were very hesitant to even lend money out. And so, that was pretty much taken off the table. Second one was investments. And investments weren't doing really well right there because obviously the market was crashing. And so people were very scared to invest in the market. And again, I couldn't blame them. And so that pretty much took all those options off the table. And then the third one was insurance. And generally speaking, insurance is with discretionary income. People look at insurance as an option in their homes. And I mean, we could argue whether that should be an option or not. But the reality is, if you've got to keep your electric on, or if you got to pay insurance, well, the electric right now is more important because your family needs to be able to live in the home that you have. So I understood what happened there, and so I went back to my roots. I said, all right, let me just go back to business consulting, and I did some sales consulting, and I actually ended up with a smaller company that did website development and design. And they were emerging. I mean, they had a great technology. But if you know anything about web, well, never mind, Kim, you do. Yeah, web companies, as far as client experience, as far as client schedules, as far as, that there's interpersonal communication skills, they were a little lacking. And so, I ended up partnering with him. And while I was partnered with him, I was going to a networking event. And I met a gentleman who I cannot recall his name now, but he told me he was a business coach. And I said, oh, okay, what does that even mean? I, at least at that time, had not been exposed to it. And we're talking about 2009. So I would say that the trend towards the idea of coaching really didn't emerge yet. And so, the idea of having a coach, which was different than a consultant then, was still just emerging. It just still wasn't mainstream yet. And so I said, well, let's get together. I work with businesses, you work with businesses. This could be a great match. And we sat down in my office in Portsmouth, and I shared with him what I did, which most people understand website design and development. I mean, they understand how that works. Our I guess our application of it was a little different. We did an assessment. We really tried to find out what the client was trying to do as far as who they were trying to attract. And so he liked our consultative approach to it, which of course is what I brought to the company. But then I asked him what he did. And it was interesting because he had described something that had been on my heart pretty much since I've been in my parents' businesses. Again, I had witnessed the great things they did to support their prosperity and the prosperity of people around them. But I also witnessed a lot of the things they did that hurt them. And so with that appreciation, I always wanted the opportunity to help small businesses. And so this is basically what he described to me. This was his 10, 30-second pitch, whatever you want to call it. He said, well, most business owners, they're really good tradesmen, which means they're really, really good at what they do. However, when it comes to the different business elements, systems and processes, that's where they struggle. And so what I do is I support them in the business acumen to support their overall growth. And it was like the heavens opened up. It was like angels singing. It was a profound experience for me because honestly, up to that point, I never heard of somebody who supported business owners in that way. And I instantly fell in love. I instantly fell in love to the point where, I could barely contain myself, come home to talk to my wife. And at that point, I think we only had 7 children. So
yes, you heard that right.
Yeah, I only had 7 at that time. All right. And then let me also say that during that time, 2008, 2009 just happened. So I was concerned about going to my wife and saying, I want to do something else other than work for the guy that I'm working for, who had partnered with me, who I was actually making money with that company where, there was a lot of uncertainty, around our lives at that point. And so, I was, somewhat fearful, but it felt right to go tell her. So I come into the door and she sees I'm pretty excited. And so she thinks, I made a sale that day because, when you're in sales, you get really excited when you make a sale. And she goes, oh, what's going on? What happened? And, she really wanted to celebrate with me. And the first words that came out of my mouth, I believe, was, I found it. And that obviously caused us a kind of a state of confusion because she's thinking, okay, sales coming. She's thinking, money's coming. But yeah, exactly. And I say, I found it. And she goes, okay, you found what? I said, and I explained to her, my experience with this guy one-on-one. And I explained to her that I didn't get a sale that day. But I explained to her what this guy had done and how he did it. And she goes, that is it. Absolutely. Now, you always have those moments where you just need that confirmation that you're heading in the right direction. And that was one of those moments for me. When she supported the idea of me potentially leaving the people I was working for, where we didn't have any savings, that was all gone, at that point. But to go ahead and pursue, this career, which neither one of us knew anything about, it was an amazing moment because she saw the congruency in who I was. She said, okay, yes, that is what you were meant to do. So interestingly enough, I kept the job that I had. But I was engaging with the guy constantly. I said, all right, so how'd you do it? What'd you do? And he had actually bought a franchise, and the franchise was Growth Coach. And I explored Growth Coach, and the investment of that was, it's around, $80,000 to get that franchise. And there was another one that was pretty big called
really, Coach? I had no idea. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Growth Coach. And that was back then. So I can only imagine what it is now, right? So it's $80,000. And then I explored some other ones. Action Coach. Action Coach was one of the bigger ones in the nation. It was $120,000. And I said, okay, that's a pretty big investment. Well, let me go ahead and find out because I'm a huge fan of the franchise model because if they already have the systems in place and you can automate it, that means it accelerates your learning curve. It accelerates your impact. You benefit from their marketing. So I'm a big fan of the franchise model if it's available. But there are conditions with the franchise model that I am not as big a fan of. One of them being the territories. So I was, engaging with this person about Growth Coach and Action Coach. And unfortunately, the area that I lived in at the time for 20 years were both taken. And I said, okay. So I had these established relationships. I had these people that I know here in this area. If I wanted to go coach them, what would I have to do? And both organizations more or less said, well, you would have to go to the representative of that area, and between you and them would have to work out some type of arrangement where you coach them for some type of compensation. I said, All right, so I understand that. I understand territories, but you're telling me that I have to pay somebody to coach people I already have a relationship with. Got it. I have a challenge with that. I had a big challenge with that, especially since the closest coaching availability for me was over 45 minutes to an hour away. So I could not coach anyone within a 45-minute drive. Second challenge I had was I said, well, I go in there, I build this business. If for some reason I'm not impressed with how you support us as a franchise, what are my options? I said, well, you would obviously no longer be able to use our brand or any of our material. And I said, I understand that. So, well, you would also forfeit all your contracts. I said, you mean the leads you provide? I said, no, every lead that you have for us, you would forfeit it, and you would have a 2-year non-compete to not coach with them or interact with them. And I said, well, that's going to be a problem too, because you're talking about me taking personal relationships I already have. I introduced them to a company, and then even though I had established relationships with them before, you're telling me I can't coach them. Okay, so I went back to my wife and I said, babe, I don't know if the franchise is where we want to go. I mean, I'm basically paying somebody $80,000 to $120,000 for them to get clients that I have personal relationships with, and I can't coach in our backyard. So we may have to do this thing on our own. And so I began to research. I mean, just dug in everywhere I possibly could. And I was learning about what coaching was. I was learning about systems and processes. I was learning about sales processes, which I'd already had some experience with through my consulting and consulting years and through the entrepreneurial childhood that I had. But there's a difference between theory, there's a difference between witness, and then application and facilitation. So I'm getting that application and facilitation part of it together. And from that, ESI was born, which is Enterprise Solutions International, meaning business answers for everyone. You see that? Yeah, it was nice. And then also my wife, who happens to be a Trekkie, big dork Trekkie girl, loves the idea of enterprise. You can't laugh. I'm on the thing. All right. So
I can laugh, though. Positive Productivity Podcast.
So you can laugh all you want.
Perfection and wives are welcome.
So
I got your back, Claire.
she said she's got your back. So it was a couple years in, and we had actually developed a really good reputation. We had moderate success. We were growing, we were emerging. But when somebody asked about a business coach in the areas that I frequented, I always came up in the initial conversation, always. And I actually got the attention of somebody who's now a close personal friend who worked with the Tony Robbins Organization. And this was back in 2012 initially, maybe 11, like 2011, 2012 initially. And, our relationship had continued to grow. And it's interesting, when he went to first see me, he wanted to size me up as a coach, right? Because, he works with the Tony Robbins Organization. And Robbins is one of the most impactful and successful coaching organizations in the country. And so somebody had told him that, hey, we're having this coach come in and he's going to do this presentation on NLP, which happens to be a big part of, Tony Robbins' model. And so he went to size me up. He's like, oh, some guy over here says his coach is doing NLP. Let me go check it out. I don't know if he went to size it up to entertain himself or if he's just evaluating talent. But nonetheless, throughout the presentation, he was impressed. He said, okay, that's a different spin on it, but I think you have a great grasp on neurolinguistic programming. It was kind of cool. And so from that budded a great relationship, and we got opportunities to do some great things in the community. Twice we did fire walks. We did one for a kind of a grand opening of a farmer's market or a local produce market. And it was great just to have everybody come around and do the fire walk. And I really set myself up. I'll tell this story real quick too. So you need to be careful in the positions you put yourself in. So he said, hey, I'm going to do this fire walk. I need something to warm this up. And, our model is to have somebody else do this, do a warm up, and then I warm them up to go out there. Do you have any good content? I said, yeah, I've got great content for it. I got this thing called, tapping into the unlimited, motivation through fire or something. I can't remember what it was. Unlimited fire motivation or something. I say, it's perfect because it's about fire. It's about motivation. Let me go in there. And I go in there, I do this presentation, and it did indeed do well. But I realized at the end of it, because, I had this great line. I said, listen, you guys, tonight is not about walking on fire. It's about walking through something that sets you up beyond the fire. And, Michael, who was my friend, he loved it. He was like, man, it was so good. And I realized at that time, it's like, you know what? I'm going to have to go first. Now, I don't know why it did not impress upon I don't know why it did not come to mind that not only was I going to have to walk on fire that night, but I was going to have to walk first projecting nothing but confidence. Because, if the guy who's speaking about fire has hesitation in front of the fire, what does that mean for everybody else? So I was like, oh, crap. I'm walking tonight. I've never done this before. I didn't prepare myself at all with the idea. I'm doing a presentation, and I've got to show so much confidence going through that everyone else is like, yeah, let's do it too. So I'm like, oh, I'm walking through fire. And so I go to the front and nobody can see me sweating. Luckily, I'm in front of the line, right? So nobody can see me sweating, but I'm like, I'm getting ready to walk on fire right now. Okay, yes, I got conviction. Let's do this. And I trust Michael. He's going to take care of me. He knows I have kids, right? And so he's going to take care of me. And he just said, do this. And I said, all right, I'll do this. And I walked through fire. And what I was told by everybody else afterwards is that I did it with such conviction that I gave them the confidence to go through it too. They had no hesitation. So evidently I performed well. But that was actually a really cool moment. And it's interesting. As good as my relationship was with Michael before then, after that event, he really started taking me seriously as a coach. He started saying, okay, this is somebody that I can rely on here locally. And so we had another event come up, and there was somebody else who wanted to do a fire walk. And so he asked me to do the same presentation there. And I have to admit, I was a little bit more prepared this time, right? Because I had done it before, but I always want to stretch myself because that's what we do. So I told my wife, I said, babe, you got to come too, because walking through fire was a great experience. You need to do it. And I said, you know what? I think the kids need to do it too. Oh yeah.
Okay,
so
listeners, we have known each other for 2 years, but I have not heard this story before. And oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. So we're there, and this one's done at a church, and I had the same presentation. We have room, I think between 70 and 80 people, and we're going out there, and they've got the drums going, and of course I'm the leader again because I'm the one that's on stage, and I'm the one that pushes them through. So I'm the example, and I've done it before, so it's no problem. Let me go. I go through the fire, and I tell my wife, all right, it's your turn. And so she sees me go through it, and she ends up going through it. And we said, you know what? What type of opportunity we're going to have to give our kids an experience to do this again? We're just not going to have that opportunity. So I can't remember how many of our kids went through.
All of them, even April. April was the youngest one.
She was 4 at the time, right? Yep. So yeah, we had all of our kids at the time, all 7 of them. She was 3. No, you sure she was 3? Okay, so I
remember 3 and 83.
Okay, so I thought it was 4 and 84. But still, so April was 3 or 4 years old, right? And she walked through fire. Right. And she did it because she saw all the other siblings do it. And then Michael said that was the most awesome thing he's ever seen, because we actually had somebody who was 80 years older walk through fire that day too. And then so we had an 80-year gap between the youngest and oldest walk through fire that night. And it was a great experience. And that's kind of what closed out 2012. And so in 2012, the Robbins Organization was in transition. They had recognized that there was an underserved market when it came to business, and so they were looking for business coaches, coaches that had specific acumen towards business. And after that event, Michael was like, you know what, you would absolutely fit in with what we're doing. Put in an application. So I put in an application with the Robbins Organization. Didn't end up getting a call back right away, I would say, at all, but that's okay, right? So I didn't get a call back, and I was like, all right, life will continue, life will go on. And then it was then that hit me that another underserved market is the Christian market when it comes to coaches. And I just had this idea. And I remember as I'm waiting for the word to come back from Robbins, I remember reaching out to Michael and saying, hey, Michael, have you ever thought about doing like a faith-based coaching company? And he's like, you know what, now that you talk about it, I see a need for it. And then, it's one of those things that, you text somebody and you get a little response back. About 4 or 5 months go by, and Michael approaches me again, and he goes, hey, Fred, I know I asked you to do this in 2012, and this is beginning of 2013 now, because I know I asked you to do this, last year, but I need you to put another application to Robbins. And honestly, I initially turned him down and said, listen, they didn't even call me last time. They didn't have the courtesy to let me know that, they didn't even want my application. So why am I going to engage with them? I mean, it's, obviously, I didn't even get he goes, no, listen, trust me. This is what I need you to do. I said, all right. And a couple months go by, only 2. And I get a call from Michael, and this was in April. And he goes, listen, Fred, this is what's going on. Last time we did this last year, We ended up with 50, 60 coaches. But we were trying to build the business department. What we found out was even though they were great coaches, they did not speak the lingo. They didn't have the acumen we needed for business. And so, unfortunately, they were great coaches and we were able to do some things with them. But as far as how we wanted to apply them to help these business owners, it's not working out. We need people who have business experience. I said, okay, that's good to know. So why are you calling me? He goes, this is why. We're going to bring 50 more people into this organization. And we've already selected 30 of them. So we have 20 spots left. And we have about 40 people who are eligible for these spots that we have in there. And you're one of the 40 that are good for the 20. I'm going to share something with you because this is what excluded you last time. You said, I love you. As a brother, we've known each other a long time. And you always worry when somebody starts a conversation like that, right? You're like, oh God, the hammer's getting ready to come. Yeah. All right. He goes, I love you, but we have a brand. And what he's talking about is the Anthony Robbins Organization. If you didn't know, they've really started with the traditional coaching things, as far as coaching people through different addictions. So you had drug addictions, you have alcohol addictions, you had smoking addictions, and you had weight, right? And at that time, I weighed 340 pounds, big boy. And, God bless it. Other than the fact that I looked heavy, I mean, I look at the pictures of me now and, or look at the pictures of me then now, and I can't believe how big I looked because when I looked in the mirror, it didn't look that big. You know what I mean? But 340 pounds, you can't really say you're small. And they had a brand. And to bring on a coach to go on stage in any capacity, looking the way I did, would be a brand conflict. And I was in business. I understood that. And so what he said was, I can't tell you that you have to lose weight. But I will tell you, that was one of the considerations is how you would represent the brand last time. He said, so I can add to your application that this is a journey you're willing to take on. And it was right around my birthday. My birthday's on tax day. It's April 15th. Also, yeah, by the way, if anybody has, wants to wish me happy birthday, feel free to look faith first. Go ahead and wish me happy birthday. Because you have to celebrate tax day, right? Because everybody else is upset they got to give money. So I figured there should be something to celebrate. You can celebrate with me. But, having that moment, I said, it was right next to my birthday. And I said, it's time. I was 35. I think I was just getting ready to turn 35 or just turned 35. It's like 1 or 2 days around it. And it was just, we realized that even though at that point I had not had any serious health challenges to my weight. I mean, I had some minor things, but I wasn't a diabetic. I didn't have high blood pressure. I mean, the traditional things that came in, I was, at 35 being that big, I was begging for it. I was going to get ready to become a statistic in the wrong way. And I said, all right, yeah, I'm willing to make that change. And so I ended up partnering with the Anthony Robbins Organization. And it was really interesting because I cannot speak well enough about my experience there. They are truly the best coaches in the world. They're master coaches. And again, my friend Michael, they are exceptional. And so I went through the advanced skills training for coaches with the Robbins Organization. And something else happened during that summer. So I'm working Robbins. I'm going through the coaching. I'm becoming a better coach, just overall a better coach. But in 2013, it just seemed like the Christian faith was under attack, which is something that's very important to me now. But it was very, it was something I paid attention to then. I have to admit, I didn't take as much ownership in 2013. I called myself Christian. I did everything Christian. But even with ESI, Enterprise Solutions International, I used foundationally Christian concepts to, motivate employees and to create processes and to, integrity selling. And so I did all these things that had kind of a root in faith, but I never really advertised it that way. I never packaged it that way. It was just like, this stuff works. And in 2013, in the summer, L.I.V.E. was getting sued because they didn't want to pay for abortive contraceptives. There are 20 contraceptives that were mandatory in Obamacare, and 16 of them were non-abortive. And they said, well, we have no problem paying for these 16, but the 4 that are abortive, we refuse to pay for. That somebody else, we're not saying you can't do it. We don't have the right to tell people what they can and can't purchase, but our money will not be going towards it. And they ended up going to the Supreme Court. In addition, there was a baker in Oregon that said that they chose not to make a cake for a a gay wedding. And, people can talk about whether that was, their right or not. I've seen people refuse service for far lower reasons than that. Not to be funny, but even Steinfeld, no soup for you because you talked in line, right? And so to have something as important as their faith be the reason why, I'll support anything you want. Your bar mitzvah, your birthday, I'll do a Super Bowl party, I'll make a cake for anything you want, but I cannot support this. They got sued and lost over $100,000 in a lawsuit. And Chick-fil-A at the time, the owner, Dan Cathy, who had taken over for his father, Truett, was asked, because this was a hot topic during that summer, what are your personal beliefs on traditional marriage? And because, most people know that Chick-fil-A is a Christian company, he said, well, I believe in traditional marriage. So, other people could do what they want, but, what I see is marriage between a man and a woman. And even though he had never denied service based off of that, never denied hiring based off of it, never denied promotion based off of it, even though it never impacted his business in any way, because of his personal beliefs, they boycotted his stores. And it was a moment of reflection for me. It was, Lord, why aren't you protecting your people? I mean, as far as I can tell, I don't think you want companies to pay for abortives. And I don't want you to, you don't want people to deny you in public. And I doubt you would want people to support things that are against the foundations, of our faith. We love everyone, but we could choose not to participate in the sin. But you're letting them be attacked. You're leaving them out there to be vulnerable. Why aren't you doing anything? And you need to be really careful because when you put God out there like that, and you say, why aren't you doing anything? Sometimes the answer you get back isn't nice. My answer was, why aren't you? And what that meant at the time was, I've been blessed with this business experience and this business acumen. I've been blessed with the entrepreneurial childhood I had. I've been blessed with this additional education as far as coaching because, in addition to being at the Robbins, I also, went to the International Coaching Academy and have my certification from there. So I had all this exposure to business and coaching, but I chose to do it in a secular way. I, in addition, had refused to say that, God was the driver of my business. And it was just intolerable. I didn't like the answer because I felt really bad because I was scared. The answer is I was scared for two reasons. Number one, I knew there would be a challenge in growing my business if I shrunk my market. And to say you're a Christian anything, look, there are three businesses that are getting punished for it right now. So, I add what is already a slowly emerging market, meaning coaching, and I put another requisite on it saying faith. That puts my family at risk. In addition, I had recognized that some of the biggest religious leaders, they were constantly under attack. I believe in the enemy, and they were constantly under attack. And a lot of times they weren't going to be able to attack the head. They attack the kids, they attack the family. And I said, man, what risk do I put my family at that point? We, let me see, I don't think we had number 8 yet. I think Claire was pregnant with number 8 then. Mm-hmm. And so I went to her just like I did before. And I said, babe, I'll tell you, witnessing all this, and she had witnessed it with me. It's like she didn't know what was going on. I said, babe, I asked God why he was letting it happen. And the answer I got back is, why are you? And I think I'm supposed to open up a coaching firm for Christian business owners. And again, it's, you need those little confirmations in life. My wife gave me just an answer that still resonates with me, which is that's it. That's what was missing. And so I'm expecting, going into there, kind of a discussion, kind of that's a big decision, kind of a little bit of a back and forth of why I would come to this decision. But instead, it was just like before when I came home all excited. I found it. She goes, that's what was missing. I said, what do you mean? She goes, for the longest time, I knew you were supposed to be doing something different. And when you brought coaching, I absolutely knew that's what you were supposed to do. But these last 5 years, something was missing. I didn't know what it was. And this is it. This is what's missing. This is what you need to do. And again, very shocked. I said, okay, well, what does that look like? And so we had to think of a name, and we had to say, okay, what's the foundation of who we are? What's the foundation of our beliefs? Foundation of our beliefs is that in a growing, emerging, successful, prosperous Christian market, is the best thing for this world, because the things we're asked to do with our charity, things we're asked to do with our example, the things we're asked to do with our impact, that's how we change the world, is to have this thriving Christian business community. And so how do we get this thriving Christian business community? Well, we need the Christian consumer community to take ownership of it and to recognize that their dollar has power. And every dollar they have, and if they spend it in a place with a Christian business, that the Christian business is called to do the right thing with that. Because we know plenty of other businesses that have no calling and don't do the right things. And so we came up with Look Faith First, kind of a buy local. That was the whole idea, because I had helped buy locals at that point where, just here regionally. But I was like, you can still treat it like a buy local, because what you're doing is you're asking people to change their buying behaviors in a way to support a cause. Well, our buy local is buy Christian. So look faith first. Give a fellow Christian brother or sister an opportunity to gain your business. And if they underperform, at least you gave them the opportunity. Or even if you didn't give them to the point where you gave them the opportunity, but you just considered them, just being open to being intentional with every dollar you had can make a profound change. And so look faith first. It's interesting. I believe in like 2015, it was about a year after that decision. 2015 is when you and I had connected.
Yeah.
Was it 2014?
No, March of 2013. Or 15, right after.
Yeah, 15. That's what I thought. Yep. So it's about a year after we had, connected, where I was still forming what that foundation looked like. And as a result, you've seen what's happened. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that we're now able to offer. I mean, it's amazing, how much clarity comes to you and how much conviction comes to you and how much certainty comes to you when you're more authentic. And I really felt that authenticity as far as this is who we are supposed to be. This is who I am supposed to be. And my clients felt it. I mean, we've had clients who have benefited in massive ways through it, because, I'm able to talk about things about, like, for example, like purpose. And that's the reason why I love, the idea of your show. I mean, you guys talk about purpose a lot here, or at least you talk a lot about purpose here. And it's having that purpose and aligning with that purpose and having conviction towards that purpose that allows you to be a little bit bolder and allows you to be a little bit more creative and be a little bit more explorative. I think that's a word. So, I don't know. I mean, in my journey,
I'm waiting for Claire to tell you if it's the right word.
Yeah. Now, she just smiled, so I'm going to get away with it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing once you're that in line with what you're supposed to do, because things just seem to come easy. The things that you say, there's no hesitation in it. You feel good in it, and you feel genuine. And feeling genuine and feeling authentic and feel purpose driven is just an exceptional feeling. It's an exceptional experience. So I'm sorry, my story was long, but you asked the good question.
No, I really hope it was inspiring to the audience, whether or not you listeners are Christian or non-religious or any other religious belief, that, being true and not hiding from your faith while you're running your business is really beneficial. And I'm going to jump in here, Coach, with a little bit of the story of how we met. Coach, you were looking for marketing support as you were releasing your book, God's Business. And this is going to be in the show notes, which again, listeners, you can find at thekimsutton.com/pp070. And so we started working together. But I remember one of the most poignant, is that a good word? Questions when we first spoke, you asked me about my beliefs. And this was something that I had just realized I needed to be more honest about myself. And while I hadn't brought it into my business yet, I did let you know that I was Christian. And what had led to that was just 2 months prior to us meeting, I had had the twins. Just in March, which was the month when we met, March of 2015, I came back to work. I love what I did, but I came back with no clients, no team, and I was scared out of my mind. I didn't know where I was going in the business. And I spoke with my husband, who's my biggest supporter as well, as you know, and I told him I was scared because I wasn't getting jobs, and he said, well, don't ask God for jobs, ask him for an opportunity. And that's what I did. And I think it was probably within about a week that we met. We started working together as maybe it all happened at the same time, that our relationship went both ways, me supporting you and you supporting me. Mm-hmm. And one of the earliest questions that you asked me was, where's God in your business? Because he wasn't there at all. And I explained that I was afraid about offending people with my faith. And I realized very quickly that that was not fair to God and to myself to be afraid of my faith. Because if I'm really going to be faithful, then I can't be afraid of it. And that weekend, I shared my faith on my website, right on SuttonStrategicSolutions.com, which I realize is not normally the website that I'm sharing here on Positive Productivity Podcast, but that's where all my business services are. But right on the About page, I put that through Christ, all things are possible. I realized that my motto needed to go onto the About page. Through Christ, all things are possible. And immediately the business started turning around, and you saw that growth. It was almost scary growth, because while I was becoming a lot more aware of my faith and how to bring God into the business, I wasn't really in line yet with my true purpose and what I needed to be doing. So while I was bringing in, to be totally honest, and you know this, way too many clients, and I grew my team way too fast, I was taking on projects that weren't aligned with me and weren't aligned with the company. So that is the journey that you have seen until, I would say, mid-2016, end of 2016, when I really became clear on what I was doing, and it constantly amazes me. So now here we are, almost 2 years later. Your book has published, and again, that's going to be in the show notes, and Look Faith First has just blossomed. I mean, your Facebook page has grown from 0 to how many thousand people?
We have over 3,000 now, and you were a big part of that. So I'm going to give you credit where credit's due. But yeah, I mean, you were a big part of that. So yeah, we're up to 3,000 people on that now. You know, we're sending out to a list of 7,000, something like that. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing a great amount of opportunity and exposure, and I would say impact coming from what we do now. Absolutely.
And just in the last month, listeners, we're recording this in January, but it's still going to be relevant for months and months to come. And, you know, if it's God's purpose for you. Just in the last month, the purpose development call through Look Faith First has relaunched. Can you share about that?
Sure. And so, you know, I'll talk about the purpose behind it, you know, at first. You know, I actually had, you know, the same conflicts that most other people do when they combine their faith in their business, which is, you know, when you put your ministry as part of your business, you know, you now, in a sense, you know, have extra, you know, duties and responsibilities that go with it. I have responsibilities and duties to my family, but now, since my business is ministry, I have, you know, responsibilities and duties, you know, to make the impact that God wants us to make. And so, you know, I remember talking to my wife and saying, babe, I feel like, you know, most people can't afford what we do, but they need the impact. You know, most people can't, but I've been given this gift for God. And so for me to limit, you know, this gift he's given me to only the people who can afford me, I don't think that's fair to the ministry. I don't think that's fair as far as being a good steward of the gifts. So I got to find something. And so, you know, we had talked about, you know, giveaway sessions here. And I actually took on a couple, you know, what I call charity cases, where, you know, there are people that were most definitely in need and didn't have the financial, you know, resources to be able to afford us. But, you know, we believed in what we do and thought they were going to make the impact. But unfortunately, you know, it's interesting. It was their habits that put them in that situation. So the things they were having during coaching, they still were not applying the things they needed to apply. And so they needed more coaching than just the selective support I was giving them. And I was like, okay, I can't take on too many of these because it's taken away from clients that, you know, that support my now family of 10. So last year, we did kind of an initial soft launch of the PDC call with the idea that if I were to offer a call and not charge for it and just say, you know what, God, if you want somebody to benefit from the gifts you've given me, just bring them to the call. I will give 110%, everything I've got to that call so that they're able to benefit from it. They're able to be blessed by it. But at the same time, this allows me the opportunity to do the things I need to do to support my family with this ministry also. And we did a couple calls, and there was just something missing. And I think there were several things. You know, one, I think we had, you know, some technology challenges. how we were able to promote it and everything else, I think we were really limited with that. Second, I feel like that, the language of different things that we were using, the vision was very large, but it wasn't big enough. Like, I didn't know what we were trying to accomplish. I didn't know what that would look like. You know what I mean? I knew what it would look like on an individual basis, but like on a community basis and a large basis, I wasn't really sure what it was supposed to look like. And that kind of came through where it was almost for a person rather than an entire community. And since then, things like Path, have really come where, that has to do with purpose, action, talent, and harmony. And we say, okay, those are the things that we're trying to accomplish as a community. If we have a community that has a definite passion and they know what their purpose is and they live with purpose and they take action when they're supposed to take action and they leverage and utilize the talents they've been given and they look and seek this harmonious relationship between their faith and their business, man, that the world changes right there. And so now that we had that focus, I said, okay, we need to resurrect that call. And something else had come to me during that time, which I had researched several years ago, which were the 7 cultural mountains that influence society. And I said, another challenge is I'm going to help people with business. And it's great to help people with business, but that only serves a limited amount of people and only has a limited impact. We need to find a way to have a bigger impact. And so I looked at the 7 cultural mountains and I said, my wife and I quite often are approached with when are you guys going to have the show? Of course, when you have 10 kids, right? They're like, oh yeah, there's that family that, and yes, the Duggars. And yeah, they don't ever know the name of it. They don't compare us to John and Kate plus 8, but thank God, right? They always say, you need, you guys need to do a show like this. You need to do something like this. And I was like, why don't we do something for the home too? I mean, I'm married 17 years, which I didn't think was that much of an abnormality, but it is evidently abnormal, at least for my generation, to be married to the same woman for 17 years. I do have, 10 children. We do have a single income that comes into home, so we have to be good stewards of the gifts that we have. I am somebody who had lost 100 pounds when I was with Robbins. So, there are a lot of personal experiences and personal successes that I had that could contribute, to the community in a personal way. So I said, this year when we launch it, let me go ahead and do both. Let me go ahead and have a business call. And the business call is the third Tuesday of every month. And you can go to lookfaithfirst.com, go to the calendar and see, that call and get the login details there. But, we do that on the third Tuesday, we do that. And then on the second Thursday, we do the PDC home call, which has to do everything about the home. It's family relationships, fitness, finance, and faith in the home. So, with our first call being last week, got a great response from it. With your support, even, we found that, the best part of that call was actually the coaching moment. So we split up the call in 2 ways. One way, we have this instructional, and it's good to give people ideas and tools and things like that to support themselves. But the second half of the call is a coaching moment where we take somebody from the audience and I coach them live. And I will tell you, there's just a little bit of anxiety around it because there are certain things you have to do there. One, you got to truncate a coaching session. So you bring what, for a lot of people could be an hour or even 45 minutes. You bring it down to 20 minutes. And there's, you want to be able to do that because of the other people that are on the call. So, there was that concern. In addition, you want to provide value for the person volunteering because you'd hate for them to put themselves out there like that and be vulnerable and not receive value for that. And then, the third thing is it had to be relevant. It had to be relevant to everybody that's on there. And so, in doing that, there was, there's concern of, well, what are we opening up when we did this? But the one we did last week, from what I've heard from everybody, it was the best part of the call. Not that they didn't appreciate the instruction, they liked it, but it felt very real and very authentic and very relatable to everyone on the call to hear that coaching moment. And so we're excited to continue that part going forward. We're excited because tonight is our PDC business call, because it is the third Tuesday. In March, when this ends up coming out, I mean, we expect to have it on the second Thursday and the third Tuesday then, and we're really excited about the prospect of it and the impact that's going to have.
I know you're hoping to share previous calls in an evergreen form in the future, but I do have to share that I think the most aha moment for me during last week's home call was the fact that my husband and I are not spending really any time with each other without technology, except when we are on our way to sleep. Every other single moment during our day has some type of technology or children. And in those rare moments, and we only have half the kids that we do, but in those rare moments when we go out, we still even have the smartphone on the table. And it's not meant to be disrespectful to each other, but it has just become a part of our life. So, Coach, I just want to circle back around for a moment, because I remember when we started talking originally, one of my big aha moments with you was that as a Christian business owner, that does not mean that we cannot, number one, be profitable in our business. And number two, it doesn't have to be a small profit. You know, God has bestowed gifts upon us to grow our business as large as we can, and hopefully give back to our community and to the world in general. But it's addressed numerous times in the Bible, that it's okay to make money. It's okay to be wealthy. Can you address that for a moment?
Sure. And so, this was a great conflict for a lot of Christian business owners, and a lot of people who are challenged with that harmonious relationship. And that's why path, that the ending part of that is harmony between faith and business, is because this is a great conflict. And we call them, the misguided beliefs. And there are three of them. Number one has to do with scarcity. There's a belief that if I have, others have not. And as Christians, we're not supposed to take away from others. And so, there's a concern that if I take too much and I acquire too much, that I'm taking away from others, and that goes against who I am, and so I don't want to take too much. And we're always very hesitant about growing our businesses. And then you have the belief about profitability, and so we're not supposed to be profitable, and what we do is we limit our profitability. But unfortunately, when we limit our profitability, in essence, we are limiting our impact. There are so many charities in the world that need money. And I know plenty of charities that get a lot of money that don't do the right things with it. I won't get political here, but let's just say a lot of our political folks, they're the ones that have the charities that don't do a lot with it. But, you have these, like Catholic charities and the YMCA and a lot of these charities that genuinely try to do the right things for our communities and our families. You have food pantries at churches, and you have mission trips, and I can go on and on and on and on about all of these, Salvation Army. Just all these things are out there, and they need money, or they need things that cost money. And so if we limit our profitability, where do we accumulate the resources that we need to make that impact? So another thing that really changed that for me was, if you read throughout the Old and New Testament, good discipleship and good honor to God is almost always rewarded with prosperity. It's really interesting. One of the biggest stories that represent that is Solomon. So, when Solomon was recruited as a young boy, he was asked, to tell God what he wished from God, how he wanted God to bless his kingdom. And he said, Lord, I only wish for the wisdom to do right by you. I only wish for the wisdom to do right by the blessings that you give me and the opportunity that I'm getting. And God was so impressed by that. He said, you could have asked me to destroy your enemies, as many of his fathers had done before. You could have asked me for great wealth, as many of his fathers had done before. But instead, because he asked for wisdom, God said, not only will I give you the wisdom that you seek, but I will give you the favor and the wealth and all the things that come with it, so you could do the right things with that wisdom. And that story always stuck out with me, because I'm thinking, okay, this is where God shows that wealth is not a bad thing. Profitability is not a bad thing. He just wants us to be wise with it. He wants us to be good stewards of it. See, even with the stories that, talk about, the rich man, going to hell and everything else, it was always because of what they did with their wealth. They talked about, with one where it said, it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. With that, that's an often, quoted verse. Well, the reason why is because the story they told about the rich man before that was he was a man who wouldn't even give his scraps off his table to the poor, and had no appreciation for the struggle of the poor, and lived a rich life, but a selfish life. That's why he had the challenge, not because he was rich, but because of the behavior that came with it. They talk about, money is the root of all evil, and that is another misquoted scripture. What is this? The love of money is the root of all evil, because the love of money creates more pursuit of money, which creates that selfishness we were just talking about. And so, I guess one of the foundational things of Look Faith First, and really of what we're trying to do as a community, is say, wealth and profitability is a great thing as long as we're hyper intentional with it, as long as we honor it and treat it as the gift that God gave us and do the right things with it when we acquire it. He wants to give it to us in abundance if that's what we're going to do with it. We just need to have the discipline and the relationship to make sure that we do.
That's also huge. And I know this is something that we have discussed in my coaching, because for the longest time, and I have to say that this year I think it's finally switched, but I'm not going to say that it's 100% switched. But my goals are purpose-focused, finally, rather than the profit.
And that's a big, big transition. I mean, you do the right things and you're purpose-driven, you will be taken care of. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to be a bumpy road. It's going to come with turns. You're going to have those hills like we were talking about before, where you're riding your bike and you ride your bike up that first hill and you're feeling great and you start going down the hill. Like, you just ride it rather than keep pedaling. You're going to end up at the bottom of the hill and you're going to struggle going back up. But you ride through it and you keep that momentum. The next hill becomes easier and the next hill becomes easier. And then at some point, the hills, they just become part of the journey. And it really does not have the effect on you that first hill does. So, no, I mean, that's a great, great place to start. And that's what that's one of the three foundational things that I talk about with motivation as far as my coaching is there are three elements. And we've talked about this. I mean, you've been integral in helping me at least design the tools to supplement this. But it starts with purpose, it goes to belief, and it goes to, the environment that you're in. And so, purpose is one of the foundational, if not the most foundational part of all of it. Because with purpose, it gives us permission to do things that sometimes aren't logical, but feel right and to have the impact and to go with grace and to go with blessing and to go with favor and say, you know what, if I'm doing the right things. And it's interesting when you start doing the right things, even though sometimes those right things don't really make a lot of sense, you receive gifts and favor and opportunity as a result of it. And you just really can't explain it other than it's a confirmation that, yes, you're doing the right things right now.
Since we started working together, all the different communities that I hadn't known were out there, maybe they weren't even out there when we started working together. But I have seen so many people become more transparent about their faith in their business. And in general, I have seen a lot more people become a lot more transparent about all aspects of their life and their business struggles on social media. And it's been very refreshing to finally see people be more authentic and less scared about being, huge successes and boasting all the time, rather than really being who they are and being proud to show who they are. And I hope that's something that, listeners, regardless of what your spiritual background is, I hope that this is definitely something that you hear out of our episode today, is transparency and authenticity is very important in your business, no matter what your background. And you can follow your passion and still, be profitable. And if you are a Christian or Jewish or whatever your religious background is, and you find a way to bring it all together into your business, good for you. That's outstanding.
Okay.
Back to you,
So,
Coach.
yeah. So, what else can I do to support your community? And
You can share where people can find you online, and this will be in the show notes.
sounds great. So, obviously, our website, which is pretty, it's the easiest way to get a hold of us, would be www.look, L-O-O-K, faith, F-A-I-T-H, first, F-I-R-S-T.com. We also have a Facebook page, which we mentioned before, which is, it's a lot more active now. We have a lot of great content coming on there. You will probably see our YouTube page. And because we're doing the PDC call twice a month, at the very least, we see regular updates with those. But we see opportunities for even more videos. For example, we did the 12 Days of Excellence to end last year, and we got some very positive reviews on that as far as setting people up for success and excellence in 2017. So yeah, I mean, just look Faith First, and you'll find us in a multitude of ways.
Coach, thank you so much for coming on today. I have loved hearing all the different parts of your story that I didn't even know about, and enjoyed hearing even the parts of your story that I had heard before, but it's been outstanding.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And a final thought for everyone, in my book, when I sign my books for people, and at the end of every email, I have a statement that I share with people to really, move them on their way with, fulfillment and happiness. And that's, I urge everyone to live, work, and love with purpose. That's the secret of it all.
Hey there, this is Kim Sutton, host of the Positive Productivity Podcast. And I just want to take a quick moment to thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it and were inspired, I would love to hear your feedback. Please take a moment or two and visit the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or on my website at thekimsutton.com to leave your rating or review. I'd also like to invite you to join the Positive Productivity Book Club and to find out more about my coaching packages by visiting thekimsutton.com. Until the next episode, I hope you have a positive and productive day.